Welcome back, everyone. This episode is a difficult one and something I've been putting off doing, but saltwater reefing isn't all fun and games, and I think people deserve to know the full story of what they're getting into when they start this hobby. This episode will be chock full of things I wish I'd known or believed early on. There were a few bits of information that I completely ignored when we got started, and it didn't take me long to figure out why I should have listened. I'll touch on those one by one, so buckle in, this episode is important. Before you start a saltwater tank, know up front that quarantine is not only important, it's necessary, unless you want to wipe out your tank repeatedly. In our 6 months experience, we've already seen major illnesses and issues. Once you come to grips with the reality that this is something you must do, then you're ready to watch the rest of this video. There are some people who will tell you that all you need are good quality foods, water changes, and vitamins for your fish, and I say to those people, stop talking. Stop telling beginner reefers that they don't need to quarantine. You may have a magic formula for preventative treatment, reputable purchasing sources, tiered graduation tanks, or an eye for identifying sick fish, but those of us who are just starting out do not have that luxury. We're buying from local stores who do absolutely nothing to ensure the health of their fish. I am very glad that we took the steps to quarantine from the beginning. The primary thing I wish I'd known up front is how much time, information, money, and luck it takes to properly quarantine. If you do the basic setup that people recommend, a tank, heater, filter, PVC, air stones, ammonia test, you will be forever topping the tank off and doing water changes trying to keep it clean and keep the ammonia in check. It is a full-time job. I had no idea the amount of water I was going to need to have made and how much salt I would need, or how quickly the ammonia can become a problem. All I did every evening after work was take care of the quarantine tanks and do the minimum necessary to keep the display tank in order. For weeks and weeks. We were so glad to have the RODI unit on hand. The cost of buying water alone for the tanks would have been prohibitive and would have stopped us before we even got started. After the main tank was set up with the snowflake clownfish in their own sort of quarantine, we purchased a flame angel, a fire shrimp, a turbo snail, an emerald crab, and a handful of astrea snails. Despite feeling like I'd already read and researched enough, I still messed up that first group by leaving the lights on and assuming that because the temperature and presumably salinity were a match, they did not need to be acclimated to the water. Luckily, none of them died from this transfer, but I could have made this a lot less stressful for them. The next stupid thing we did was to ignore what everyone said and put live rock in the tank. I did not intend to treat prophylactically, so I thought, hey, if I need to use medication, I'll take the rock out. I'll have to swap things up anyway to get the fish by himself if that happens. What I didn't realize is that the darn thing is a detritus trap. It was impossible to keep the tank clean of leftover food and waste with it in there. It didn't take too long to go ahead and buy some PVC for the angel to hide out in. He was much happier with that situation than the rock anyway, to be honest. We started calling him Twitch, like the character from South Park, because he was rather paranoid. I'll never forget the first time that the fire shrimp molted. I thought, oh my gosh, he's dead! Something ate him. Nope, just a molt. Disaster averted. Our next mistake was not recognizing signs of illness. We didn't know what scraping was and thought that the flame angel might just be playing in the bubbles of an air stone. After a few days of watching him, we could tell that he wasn't eating. We promptly did some research and went to the store to buy all manner of tempting foods that were sure to get him eating. When those only had a small effect, we even purchased live baby brine shrimp to feed him, but he still wasn't interested. Every once in a while, he would take a tiny bite of something so small I couldn't even see it. I think the worst mistake we made was delaying treatment. We kept hoping he would just fight it off or start eating, but we did buy a separate quarantine tank and necessary equipment so we could separate the fish from the invertebrates. We wanted to be sure that he wasn't having any issues with ammonia, even though we were doing 10 to 20% water changes daily. Ammonia wasn't the problem. Amid all this water changing, testing, and worrying about trying to get the fish to eat, we also found time to be fascinated with literally everything. Shrimp eating food, snails eating food, but oddly enough, we never saw the emerald crab moving around much. He usually stayed under his rock cave, and we figured he must be eating at night.
Alright, now seriously, how does this happen? This is a floating thermometer. That snail is just floating on it. Like, come on, that is hilarious. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna get off of there? Did you think this one through? Do you want to get off?
Even though we were having fun watching the inverts, the flame angel continued to struggle. By this time, he was about 3 weeks in and still not eating much. When he started getting pale lips and losing his color, we said enough is enough. We finally purchased medicines from a miserable selection that was available at the nearest pet store and began treatment with a freshwater dip, followed by a sulfaplex treatment. We thought maybe flukes could be the problem or some sort of bacterial infection. He was doing a little better after the treatment, eating a tiny bit more, but we worried that if there was really anything wrong with him, it seemed to be that he was just slowly starving himself to death. After living for almost 2 months now in quarantine, he didn't really have any outward signs of illness. We decided that if he was to have a fighting chance, he needed to go into the display tank, where he might be less stressed. We acclimated him to the main display, where he did seem a lot happier to have companions. He basically moved in with the clownfish behind their rock. This was probably a pretty stupid move in retrospect, because he may have had something else seriously wrong with him that we just couldn't see. After researching, we also decided that we wanted to try to keep a coral beauty angel with him, so we purchased one at the local fish store to put into quarantine. It can be difficult to keep more than one dwarf angel in the same tank, but we only had 3 fish in a 90-gallon display, with lots of hiding places and rockwork, so we were willing to take a chance. We knew we would have to buy another separate tank for the flame angel if there was any aggression between them. The coral beauty we purchased, however, did not last 24 hours, even after properly acclimating him and seeing him eat. Having now purchased 1 fish who refused to eat, and then another who died immediately from the local fish store, we aimed our frustrated gaze at Live Aquaria, a reputable online fish store. Diver's Den had a lemon peel angel, and there was a coral beauty for sale in the normal Live Aquaria fish roster. If 2 dwarf angels were to be tried in the tank, why not 3? Perhaps there would be less aggression among them if there was 1 more to help disperse the attention. So we ordered both. When they arrived, I was ready. Lights off, no commotion, tanks set to the proper salinity. They were both different, coming from different areas of the website. And I slowly acclimated both fish to their tanks. I was astonished to see how big the lemon peel angel was. He wasn't just big, but sturdy, buff, and he had attitude. From the second I opened the bag and saw him looking at me like he wished he could throw a knife my way, I knew we were never going to be able to keep him in the same tank with the flame angel. This fish was high energy, super hungry all the time, and swam 100 laps a day in his tank. I fell in love with him instantly, and we named him Flash. The difference between this healthy fish and the ones we had purchased locally was astounding, and it only made us worry more for the flame angel. On the second evening that we had them in quarantine, I must have been dreaming about them. Still mostly dreaming, I woke my husband up with an urgent question. "What is the name of the fish?" His fuzzy, "Huh? What?" was met with the question again before I fully woke up, and we laughed and fell back asleep. In the morning, we laughed about it as we woke up, and my husband said, "Well, the fish's name is Midnight," giving the coral beauty an official title. When we went to check on the fish a little while later, the coral beauty was dead. No warning, no reason, just gone. Midnight had died somewhere in the night. By now, the deaths were really adding up and taking an emotional toll. That's why it's taken so long to do this video. What were we doing wrong? Our emerald crab had died, then the 2 coral beauties, and the flame angel was still swimming slowly around the display tank like he only had half a brain to work with. Food just floated past him, almost like he was blind. We decided that the 10-gallon quarantine tanks were not working. I was determined to keep Flash alive at any cost. That weekend, we went to the local fish store and bought a Red Sea Max nano tank. 30 gallons, light, skimmer, return pump, all included. 1 heater and an extra power head, some live sand, along with some Dr. Tim's, nitrifying bacteria, and live rock from the display, and we were in business. As soon as it was ready, Flash and an Ocellaris clownfish we called Penelope, who was meant to be the quarantine tank's permanent resident, were put into the nanotank. This became their home for the next couple of months, and drastically reduced the stress of quarantine tank management. A small auto top-off reservoir and the ability for the tank to process waste on its own were such a relief I nearly cried. This tank would forever be the new quarantine, but we kept the old 10-gallon tanks for hospital tanks. The idea was to reduce stress, monitor, and remove for treatment as necessary. We were still not treating prophylactically. Flash had been through the diver's den routine, and we were really stupid putting Penelope, a fish from the local store, in with him. Luckily, both Flash and Penelope are still with us today, along with Hide and Seek, the snowflake clownfish. They survived introduction to the main tank and made a couple new friends with the arrival of a powder blue tang and a spotted hawkfish. They all get along very well. One name you may have noticed missing from the list of tank mates is Twitch. The flame angel hung in there for a few more weeks before finally passing away. I honestly believe the poor guy starved to death. Despite being happy in the tank, seemingly disease-free, and showered with adoration and every tempting food imaginable, he wouldn't eat enough. Of all the ones we lost, his death was the hardest to take. We spent so much time and effort trying to keep him alive and had so much fun watching him that it was extremely miserable to lose him. If anything, I hope this video is a good example of what not to do when you start in this hobby. The excitement of wanting to see a tank become established, along with conflicting information online to questions that need answered, as well as thinking that you can beat the odds and get lucky, all contributed to a difficult series of events. Don't be that person. Go slow, quarantine everything. Treat all new arrivals immediately, whether they show signs of illness or not. We'll be aggressively treating all new arrivals going forward, which I was very much against. Lesson learned. It would have been easy to hide all of these things that we went through, but I really want to be honest and put out there our experience so that other people can learn. The most important thing I've learned is that you need to put the health and welfare of your aquatic life first in whatever decisions you make. Good intentions aren't enough. You need information. Listen to the majority and ignore those random people who say, "Well, I don't do that, and it's always fine." In fact, I recommend you lift a middle finger at your screen whenever you see that kind of crap. If you're against profanity, you can lift all your fingers together, like waving, and we'll know what you mean.
Through the big hole, through the middle hole, up to the top, and down to the bottom, and through the big hole, through the middle hole, up to the top, and down to the bottom, and through the... What the hell? He's done this probably 10 times. Oh, we're gonna break. Oh, sorry, it must have scared you with your talking. Get a little gun shy. You can go back to playing, that's fine. Where are you? There you are. You're gonna come and say hello? There you are. Don't hide. Come on. Come on. There you are. Won't you come out?